Let's go ahead and call the meeting order at 10:02, and if you guys can take roll call, please.
Okay, Lee Warren,
Here.
Sean Emmerich,
Present.
Stephen Reinhardt,
Here.
Robert Dane,
Here.
Barbara Evans,
I'm here.
Mike Morgan,
Here.
Dave Motley, Scott Regan,
Here.
Doyle Williamson, and then Commissioner Kestner as the liaison.
Yeah. Okay. All right, so we have a quorum. Let's go to item number 2, housekeeping.
Hey everyone, that's me. Housekeeping is just an item that we've added to all of these meetings as a reminder as we do it virtually, which is 1, if you are not speaking, mute. That way we have a lot less interference. 2, if you want to, you can use the raise your hand function, which is if you move your mouse around that little toolbar at the bottom, you'll see the hang up sign, you'll see like a little people sign, you'll also see a hand sign, and you can push that to raise your hand, and then the chair can call on you. So that's always helpful. And then finally, the chat function, let's limit that as best we can to technical issues for people who are having issues and need some help from us to get things going. In the event we have somebody who really can't communicate, we can use that chat function and the chair can read those comments into the record. But just by having sort of offline chats, we open ourselves up to open meetings issues. So those are just the sort of the 3 basics of housekeeping. That's all I got.
All right. Item number 3, remarks from the chair. I don't know if I really have any remarks. But biggest thing, for me is just make sure you stay muted. If you, we already started to hear some echoes there for a little bit, and that's what tends to happen. If you aren't muted, then the audio coming through gets fed back through, and it makes it real hard to hear everybody. So item number 4, discussion and possible action to excuse committee member absences, if any. So entertain that if anybody has any reason to make a motion to excuse an absence. All right, we will go ahead and move on to item number 5, a ratification of the minutes of July 20th, 2020 meeting. Anybody have any modifications or anything to the minutes from July 20th meeting? If not, I would entertain a motion to ratify those minutes.
Move to accept.
This is Scott, accept.
Sorry, I didn't catch that. I think I heard Barbara spoke first, but I didn't hear you, Barbara.
Oh, I move to accept.
Motion made by Barbara, and was that a second by Sean?
Scott.
Scott.
By Scott.
Second by Scott. Fair enough. Minute ratifications doesn't need a vote, so we're in good shape there. Number 6, general comments and visitors, or general comments from visitors on non-agenda items. Do we have any members or visitors that would like to comment on a non-agenda item? If so, please speak up at this time. Okay, hearing none, we'll go to item number 7, reports from subcommittee. The education subcommittee, please. Mr. Reinhardt.
I followed instructions and muted, so I had to unmute. So the education subcommittee has not met since the last meeting, but just to give an update on the Legal and Ethics SOP Writing Committee has been meeting and working on updating the legal and ethics and the SOP handouts and workbooks. And if anyone would like to make comments, any other members of the committee would like to kind of get an update, the plan is to provide that document from the writing committee, send it to the education committee, which would then forward it to the full committee. But as an education committee, we haven't met. As a writing committee, we have been very active. probably had, I don't know, 3 or 4 or more meetings since the last full inspector committee.
Okay. Tony, is there a time frame in which we have to have this approved through the full committee in order to get it over for publication?
Well, I mean, in order to give the I can let Jen speak to that a little bit better, but in order to give the providers enough time, you know, the commission still needs to approve the courses, and the SOP course is brand new. So they're both by rule required to be in place by September 1st. Actually, yeah. So September 1st, I believe, of 2021. So I would think they would need to be adopted by the commission by May. That gives the summer, you know. Jen, is that what you guys are shooting for?
Yeah, I was just
Okay.
gonna say that's our target is, you know, if we get them adopted in May, then that gives the providers enough time to submit the applications and have the courses ready to go in September.
Okay, so basically we have, from today, we have 2 meetings of ours before that has to be, actually, I take that back because it would have to be proposed and then adopted, right? So we would actually need that for our next meeting.
Yeah, and there's not and there's not the need to, so, you know, we have this change in that we're doing the SOP course rather than the outline. There's no rule, there's no need to update the rule to reflect that, because the rule currently says just 8 hours and then it sort of explains it. So you don't need a rule change to have an SOP course, but you guys do need to see the course and approve it, you know, for the February commission meeting. Well, actually, no, I guess you don't, because it's not a 2-part thing. So the commission just adopts the course. So
Okay.
yeah, you could do it you can still work on it before the May meeting. Sorry about that.
Okay,
Yeah.
no, that's what I want to clarify. I wasn't sure if it was just one and done or if we had to go through the
No.
2-point process again. Okay.
No, it's not a rule. So they just adopted in May. So yeah, you still have some time for the full committee to weigh in on stuff prior to that meeting.
Fair enough. Anything else you have, Steve?
No, that was it. Just wanted to make the clear that the writing committee is very active, and we've been looking at all kinds of things outside the box, trying to make this attractive and not a dentist visit to take care of, and something to look forward to. So I think we're headed that way.
Sounds good. All right. Thank you very much.
Hey, Lee.
Yes, sir.
Steve, would it be appropriate for me to get with you about some of the stuff that we're doing on the SOP committee, so that the information that you're putting in that course? Okay. I'll
Yes,
follow up with
because
you.
obviously, if you're making changes, major changes, that would be an ideal time. I'm not sure if your timeline on changes coincides with ours, and if so, yeah, they should be coordinated.
So I think the way Jen and I talked about this, because of the timing, I think what the writing group's going to have to do is sort of have 2 different documents based on, because the SOPs are adopted, you know, that is a rule, so they have to go through the process. So because of that, they're going to need a version with whatever changes and focus that the SOP subcommittee is moving forward, and one without, just in case there's some reason the SOPs get bumped back to the committee. But yeah, I actually talked to them on Friday about some of the things that we've been discussing that the committee's been working on, to try to make sure that they understand that there's some additional focus on certain things that need to be brought forward.
Okay.
But I think you guys getting together, I just want to spell that process out. We're going to probably have to have 2 documents.
Yeah. Okay.
And there's no restriction on Sean and I getting together and just kind of reviewing on that? Okay.
All right. I'll get with you, Steve.
Okay.
So I guess what I was getting at kind of long, big picture, was that as far as SOP as it relates to education, is that if we are going to try and close up this review and have a revision to the SOP, that will likely need to be presented at our January meeting for proposal with the commissioners in February.
Yes. Yeah, you want me to go into the SOP committee report?
Yep. Why don't we just move right over into that?
Yep. So that's what so we've met 3 or 4 times since the last full committee met. We're we're pretty close to being completely done. We have some final revisions or items we're going to address in the plumbing section, final revisions on the general provision section, and then our goal is we're going to meet December 1st. Is that correct, Tony? December 1st at 9 o'clock.
I believe that is correct. Yes.
Okay. December 1st at 9 o'clock, we're going to meet, and our goal is to work until we're done with everything, because there's a few things out there left. That way we can have final recommendations for the full committee in January. So we've made it through, and we've had some of the stuff has come up since the last full committee met, just about, just conversations about what a specialty tool is, or what's outside the scope, and different things. The plumbing board has had some stuff come up, so we've been working through all kinds of different things. We've had a lot of participation, a lot of people attending the meeting, so that's been appreciated. Just getting input from people around Texas, but I think we're on course to have everything wrapped up by December 1st, and then full recommendation in January.
Perfect. And just for a footnote, this has been a process been going on for a couple of years now, as normally does with the SOP, any type of review that we do. Those SOP subcommittee meetings are open, so any public member, whether you're on the committee or not, is welcome to attend. And I know the guys there, Sean and Scott and them are very open to hearing from everybody involved, because sometimes what may look good on paper isn't always good in reality, and so it's always good to get a number of different perspectives. So they welcome that. So I know you guys have had a good amount of people involved in that, so I think that's great. Cool. All right, is that all you got?
That's all I got.
All right. Item number 8, staff reports, executive division, please.
Chelsea, you want me to do this? Or are you going to do it?
I'll start, and then you finish with anything that needs adding.
Okay.
Status, no significant changes at TREC regarding how we're handling COVID-19. We remain almost exclusively remote, with the exception being we have folks who process the mail now twice a week. We were on a once a week mail processing, and we've bumped that up. We still just, if you hear from anyone who has noticed delays on anything they've sent into our office, we still see some delays in the mail on every front. USPS is slower than they have been. The mechanism that processes all state government mail in Austin is slower. And then internally, we're processing twice a week instead of every business day. So if you hear complaints to that effect, I think that's true. Some of that is so that we can properly address or have safety precautions in place for our staff regarding COVID-19. Some are completely outside of our control. The only way that I've seen that affect us is with mail related to the Workforce Commission, which is not anything directly related to inspectors. But I just wanted you to know the executive committee of the commission met last week and decided to keep the November meeting remote. So there was some discussion of it being in person, and we're going to keep that remote for now. There is a workshop associated with that meeting, so it's a 2-day meeting, but we'll keep the workshop somewhat limited in scope just so that that's on an all-day affair, and so it's conducive to the platform. Let's see. We are spending some time this fall working on making plans for the legislative session. This is, I've been working around the legislative session for a long time, and this is the weirdest session. I'm expecting this session to be the most unique. I'll say it that way. There's always a uniqueness to every session, but this one has more variables than normal. We're working with limited budget, which doesn't affect us, but it does affect how they spend their time. But also, there's a big question about whether or not people can come into the Capitol, how they will hear public comments, and just what session will look like. So as we make plans to determine what could possibly be included in a cleanup bill, or what needs we see need changing to our statutes, we're going to take that into account. This is likely a session where we'll maintain for the most part. I don't expect there to be monumental changes, though I'll tell you that some of the there are some we do have some changes to the inspector statute on our potential list. Tony, you want to talk about that a little bit more and then add anything I've missed?
Sure. So, to piggyback on Sunset's desire to simplify things from last session, one of the things that we were thinking about before COVID kind of threw the session into what it likely is possibly, talking to you guys about this, but possibly approaching the legislature with an idea of getting rid of that middle licensing type, the real estate license, because it's so underutilized. It complicates things tremendously, in particular with just trying to get around get the substitute experience stuff in place. So I think you guys did a great job with the rules that are going forward with the education stuff, but that was complicated by the fact that middle license type was out there and again underutilized. So that's a thought. And then always on the kind of back burner is the idea: what do you do with the dual sort of inspector recovery fund, which is underutilized because you guys have the requirement for insurance? So another thing to kind of consider. Outside of that, there's just a couple of minor tweaks that would help our staff be able to process licenses for inspectors significantly more quickly because it's manual right now. There's some statutory barriers that keep that from being entirely automated. So, again, depending on what the bandwidth is at the legislature, those are the kind of things we're talking about. And then outside of that, the other thing is, just so you guys aren't caught off guard, the inspector selection committee met to deal with the upcoming vacancies on the inspector committee, and I believe that decision will be made at the November commission meeting, I believe, for the new members. So that's there are 2 inspector vacancies and one public member vacancy. So that's all I have. Does anyone have any questions?
Yeah, do you have any questions for either one of us?
I had mentioned to Tony, I was just kind of curious, in the selection process for committee members, I would like to see, if at all possible, for someone on the current committee to actually have some input in that process.
Okay, I'll have a few things to say. We can pass that to the commission for their consideration. And Chair Kestner, if you want to speak to that, you're welcome to, but if you want to think about it a little bit, that's okay too. I will say that would be unique, that is not how that has happened in the past, but for what we do often get is if someone applies and somebody on the committee has something to say about that person, just a recommendation of some sort, those often will forward all of that type of thing to the commissioners who are on the selection committee for their review and consideration. So that's a common thing. But Scott, do you have anything on that front?
Well said. I mean, that's probably going to be part of the November workshop, and we will look at everything and we'll put that down. But we've always listened to recommendations coming from current committee members.
Well, the only thing I would say to that is, as you know, we don't always know who has and who hasn't applied, and because they are people that are in our specific industry, sometimes we may have more information that may be relevant than people that aren't inspectors. And so I think somebody on, at least someone, whatever representation we may have, but someone on the committee may be able, I'm not saying have a vote in the process, but at least have an idea of what's being applied, what's being discussed as it relates, because it is going to directly affect our committee. Mr. Reinhardt, you had your hand up.
Well, and I just kind of tag along there what was said, that it's believed that we always had the ability to give input, but we were typically clueless until we read in the advisor who was picked. So I'm not sure how we were supposed to give input, because potential candidates were never shared before or after the interviews.
Well, and this is, as I explained to Lee, this is the new process to try to bring some consistency in the selection committee process for all the committees that TREC selects. So in the past, the inspector committee there's been a hodgepodge of ways these guys, the members have been selected. And this new process was to bring consistency. Inspector committee, ESAC, all of these committees are now going through the same process. That's not to say that what Chelsea said about consideration from the commission in terms of getting input isn't valid. I was just letting you know that that's what was implemented, was a process to give some, so there's not any question about this anymore. This is how the committee selection goes forward. So
I just want to say, my hope is that in this process, if we're spending our time and volunteering our time to try and make our industry better, it can be interesting sometimes for somebody to come in and completely change the dynamic of that if they have an ulterior motive or something of that nature. And I think somebody on the committee that may have an insight to that, to give input. Obviously, I'm not saying that we have to have a vote, but I think some other insight to help make the best decision possible for the committee, I think would be prudent. Okay.
That's great. We'll carry that forward.
Okay. All right. Anything else from the executive division? All right. We will move on to TREC enforcement.
Good morning. Michael Malloy, Director of Enforcement. Not a whole lot of activity since you last met. Just have two complaints, or two agreed orders. Also inclusive of that is the fiscal year. The next time you guys meet, the report will be a lot shorter because it's only going to encompass what's been done since September 1st. So September 1st, 2020.
Okay. Perfect. Anybody have any questions for Mr. Malloy?
And you all received my email last week. So moving forward, the policy will be to email you guys the orders when we CC the commission when these orders go final. So you'll be included in those going forward.
Perfect.
So I stand by for any questions that anyone may have.
All right. Anybody have any questions for Mr. Malloy? All right. We will move on to education and exams.
Good morning, everyone. Jennifer Wheeler, Director of Education and Exams. The two reports before you are a culmination of fiscal year 2020. The first report represents qualifying inspector courses received and approved in fiscal year 2020. And you'll see at the bottom of the report, we have approved 58 initial qualifying courses in this past year. You might also note that we did not receive any qualifying renewal courses, and that's because we have all of the new education requirements that are coming forward for pre-licensing. And the second report is continuing education. So you can see toward the bottom of the report that over the course of fiscal year 2020, we have approved 190 ICE courses for license holders to take to renew their licenses.
Can I ask you a quick question on that?
For sure.
Why is it that we have 190 that were approved, but only 182 applications?
There's some holdover. So for example, if we had an application that came in at the tail end of fiscal year 2019, and we haven't had the opportunity to review or approve it, sometimes that's why those numbers are off a little bit.
Okay, because I noticed that on the previous one too, where the total applications approved was 205, but the applications received was 176. So I was just kind of curious about that.
Right.
Okay. Sorry.
Okay. Are there any questions regarding the course applications, these education reports? Okay.
Oh.
And I'll just, I'll just reiterate what Steve said earlier in his education subcommittee report, is that yes, the writing group has been meeting very regularly. I think every other Friday for the last couple of months. We've had at least 4 meetings, and they're putting in a lot of work and effort into what will next go before the education subcommittee that then you will see after that. So much appreciation to those people. Everybody's working really hard in that regard. So thank you.
All right. All right. Anybody else have any questions for Ms. Jennifer? All right. We'll move on to licensing division.
Good morning. My name is Denise Sample, the Director of Licensing, and I've got reports through August of 2020, so they cover fiscal year of 2020. And that first report shows applications received and renewal activity. The bottom half of that report shows the inspector applications received and the renewal activity. The renewal activity also compares the previous fiscal year and 2 years prior to that. The next report is license holder and registrant status, and this is a 13-month comparison of just total number of license holders. Inspectors are there in the center. The following page is the graphical presentation, and I'd like to point out that it looks like a drop in all of our license holder types, all of our license types. And this is due to the fact that because of COVID, we did not expire any licenses for a period between March and July. So we had several months worth of licenses that normally would have dropped off as part of the normal process that all were set to expire at the end of July. So that, in case anyone is shocked by seeing that dip, that explains why it seems like a greater dip in the number of license holders through the end of the fiscal year. And the last report is the average number of calendar days to process an application, and inspectors are again in the center there. This is new data, so we don't have a full fiscal year, full 13 months to compare, and we'll fill that in as we go. Are there any questions about these reports?
All right. Thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Item number 9, discussion and possible action to recommend amendments to 22 TAC 531.18 consumer information in the form adopted by reference consumer protection notice at the August 10, 2020 commission meeting.
I'm happy to take the lead on this. Okay. So as you recall, at the last inspector meeting, you moved forward with this language to include the please note language after a discussion with Commissioner Turner. This was brought before the commission and proposed at the last commission meeting. So it's before you to look at any of the comments that were received, which I believe you got a supplement for those comments, and then see if there's any tweaks you want to make. If not, the committee can recommend it for adoption at the November meeting.
All right. Anybody have any other discussion on this, or if not, I'll entertain a motion to propose for approval, or propose for recommendation. Yeah, dear Lord. I never know how to word that half the time.
That's just
actually sending it to the commission.
Recommend for the commission to adopt.
Thank you.
Would be sure.
Yeah. Okay, so anybody to entertain that motion, please?
We need a second.
Hi, this is Stephen. I will make the motion. I didn't know if I heard it first.
Yeah. We'll take that. Mr. Steve Reinhardt makes the motion. I believe Barbara came in and offered a second.
Yes.
All right. So is there any other discussion on this item?
Lee, I'm just going, I mean, there's nothing to say really, but I'm just still, my position hasn't changed on this, so.
Okay, fair enough. All right, so Tony, if you'll do a roll call for a vote on this, please.
Yeah, okay. Lee?
Yay.
Stephen Reinhardt?
Yes.
Sean Emmerich?
Nay.
Scott Regan?
Yes.
Mike Morgan?
Yes.
Barbara Evans?
Yes.
Who am I missing? I know there's one other person on, right? Or is that it?
Yeah, Robert Dane.
Robert John Dane.
Oh, I'm sorry. Robert John Dane? No?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes or no?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Sorry. All right, so it's a count of 6 yays to 1 nay.
All right, motion carries. Move on to item number 10, discussion and possible amendments to 22 TAC 531-216, renewal of license.
Yeah, I'm happy to talk to this as well, but I'll let Denise weigh in if she needs to. So in 2013, we amended the inspector statute to allow for a license reinstatement that did not require a license holder to reapply. Licensing has been doing what the statute says, but the rule has not. The rule language was not in compliance with what the statute said. So we had the rule saying one thing, we had the statute which governs saying something else, and staff doing what the statute says. We needed to fix the rule so it's in compliance with what's required by the statute. So essentially, if you're expired for more than 6 months but less than 2 years, you don't need to reapply. It's not a late renewal, it's a reinstatement, and you have to, this is the term spelled out on what you need to do. So, hold your license for the last 24 months, submit evidence that you've completed your CE that would be required for renewal of that license. If you are required to be sponsored, make sure that you submit evidence that you're sponsored, and you do not have to retake the exam. Once you meet all those requirements, then we'll approve a reinstatement license. And Denise, please correct me if I missed anything or weigh in on anything if I missed a vote.
No, you got it all. I mean, the biggest hurdle is not having to take the education that's required for a new license applicant and not having to take the test. So
Right.
that's what the reinstatement gets those applicants.
And again, it's been statutorily allowed since 2013, and the rule just for some reason we didn't fix the rule to match it.
So why did we take out that section number 3, not continue to practice until the new license is received?
Well, because I mean that's not a requirement for reinstatement. That's just a fact. If you don't have a license, you can't work. So okay. I mean that's why it's just kind of redundant to put it in there. That rule. I mean, again, I'm not an attorney, so an attorney can weigh in on this. But just because a rule that says you can't, that you can't continue to practice until your license is received doesn't mean you can continue to practice. It just
Right.
seems. We're addressing the issues and what you need for reinstatement. The fact that you can or cannot practice based on your licenses doesn't really. It was anyway. It's kind of redundant.
No, I was fine. I was just concerned that being taken out meant there was something else going on. I just wanted to make sure that had not changed.
No, that's right. We what Tony said, which is that the removal of number 3 doesn't make it okay to do that, right? Which I think is your question. What we really tried to do here is track the statutory language, but cutting that does not grant permission, I promise.
Okay, that's all I wanted to make sure. Anybody else have any questions? Anybody else have any questions on that? So Tony, am I right? And this would be the motion to be made would be to propose, to recommend proposal to the commission?
Yes, sir. Recommend the commission propose and publish in the Texas Register, however you want to say that, but just proposal is fine.
Okay. Open it up to entertain that motion, please.
I recommend that we make these changes to align the rules and to align the rules with the statute.
I appreciate you helping me, making me feel better by doing it that way, Stephen. I appreciate that. So motion made by, and I believe that was Sean with a second.
Yep.
All right. Any other discussion on this item? Hearing none, Tony, would take a roll call vote, please.
Yeah. Okay. Lee Warren?
Yes.
Steve Reinhardt?
Yes.
Sean Emmerich?
Yes.
Scott Regan?
Yes.
Mike Morgan?
Yes.
Barbara Evans?
Yes.
Robert John Dean?
Yes.
I believe that's everybody. 7 ayes.
All right, motion approved. Item number 11, update regarding inspectors' ability to perform sewer line inspections.
Okay, so again, this is me. I included the definition, the plumbing board definition as it previously was, which is what the highlighted text is, and what the new rule, which is effective August 16th, and essentially just remove that highlighted portion, which is where the prohibition to for an inspector to do these unless you were otherwise also licensed as a plumber. So that prohibition has been removed and no longer stands. What we're currently doing is working on updating the language in the legal ethics book, because this is a hot topic issue to address that. The SOP committee has looked to tweak the language in terms of making sure that there's that it reflects that you have to be competent. Yes, thank you. Competent to do this, because statutory language says that an inspector cannot perform an inspection in a negligent or incompetent manner. So even though the committee has currently decided not to weigh in and provide any standards for this, that doesn't mean an inspector who goes out and does one of these can do it incompetently. So they have to be competent. Now, what does that mean? Well, I think that that's going to be determined on a case-by-case basis, unless the committee decides they do want to set some sort of standards for it. But if not, then enforcement will need to decide that stuff on a case-by-case basis. But there will be a competency issue with this. So that's what we're doing. So it'll likely be part of the SOP rule, which will be before the full committee, in January to discuss the language that's being proposed by the subcommittee. But as of right now, what we're doing is we will send out a supplement to the providers so that they can change that in the legal ethics, and we're trying to determine how best to put this language on the website if we need to, in terms of discussing what the change in the plumbing board rule is. Okay. Any questions or concerns?
Anybody have any questions for Tony on that? All right. Hearing none, move to item number 12, discussion regarding process to utilize a list of subject matter experts on enforcement matters. Tony?
I think, Mike, aren't you going to take the lead on this one?
I can. I don't know if you want me that software issue.
Well, yeah, talk about this one, because this is kind of your, if you don't mind, you got a little bit more expertise on this.
Well, and I'll start us, and then Mike, you explain kind of where we're headed. But this came up just from a discussion that we had with Chair Warren about how to best move forward with when we need some guidance and enforcement from an expert in the field on how to apply an SOP, and our investigators and lawyers, none of them are inspectors. So how do we pick the brains of of experts when needed. And so we've landed on, we have had an informal process, and Lee, I think there were some agreements in place just within committee meetings in the past, and we wanted to formalize this process a bit just so that everybody's clear on what we can expect moving forward. And so what we plan on doing is utilizing the experts on this committee and elsewhere, but to compile a list of who we will go to for that expertise, and to do so on a rotating basis, so that we're not going to the same person over and over, but that we have a list that all of us can be confident in. So Mike, do you want to fill in a little bit on that front?
Yeah, I think I'll need help compiling the list. I mean, it could be partial members, like Chelsea said, of the committee. It just, I guess one thing to be aware of when you do provide your opinion on cases, be aware that if it gets to a point, there's been a couple occasions where these things do go to a SOA hearing. So you would have to be prepared to testify in a matter. So, and be comfortable with that possibility. So, I know some people, they'll provide their opinion, but once it comes down to being in person and seeing face to face and that type of stuff, they just don't feel comfortable with that being put in that position. So I just wanted to make that aware of anyone that wanted to volunteer to be on this list. And we're going to use this on a rotating basis, like Chelsea said, to just provide a more well-rounded opinion from people instead of going to a couple people like we've done in the past.
Oh, sorry, one more thing, and then later. I expected there to be a memo. We've developed a memo that will outline what this will look like. I expected that to be in the materials, and it's not. So I'm hoping between you, Mike, and Tony, y'all could share that, maybe like a screen share, but that's all I had to say. I'm sorry.
Okay. So I think the other point to make sure we know here is anybody who's on that list, you're not a decision maker. You're simply just giving input on, the matter at hand to help enforcement make the actual decision. That whoever is going to be on the list isn't making a decision. That was never. But there were a couple of issues that had come forward that. They were quite questionable, and when the order comes out, all of a sudden it creates this whole barrage of things. I would recommend that the majority of people that are on the list be current committee members. The biggest reason is that even if they were former committee members, things change very quickly, and if they're no longer on the committee, it's very possible that they're not as up to date on a lot of the more recent issues that have come across this committee than someone who's actually on the committee currently. So I think there can be that issue. I mean, the SOPs change, rules change, stuff like that, and people don't always keep up with that once they're off the committee.
Totally. And what I think is 100% true is that it needs to be individuals who are maintaining a robust practice so that they will be up to date on those things. But yes, we want it to be a combination of committee members and non-committee members. Non-committee members could be formers, but they could be folks that that may be future committee members, just depending on what that list looks like.
Do you want me to pull the memo up, Chelsea? I have it.
Yes, I just want them to be able to see the content so that they know where we're, what our plans are.
Okay. Let me know if everybody can see. Wait, that's not right.
That's a little weird. It's you sharing the screen of us.
Sorry. Hold on just a sec.
We've decided internally that the screen sharing function is where we all show our age.
Yes. Okay, can everyone see that?
Yes.
Okay. That's essentially it. It says 2 paragraphs.
Okay, I'll read it just so everyone has it clear. At times, the TREC Enforcement Division requires consultation with a licensed professional inspector when conducting enforcement activities. Such consultation often results in enforcement relying upon the inspector's professional opinion in the agency enforcement matters. Enforcement consultation with a professional inspector is generally limited to discussions regarding the professional inspector's expert opinion on matters covered in the inspector's standards of practice, or SOPs. So enforcement in the future will maintain a contact list of professional inspectors available to provide expert opinions when necessary. The list will consist of 5 to 10 professional inspectors with high-level qualifications who have no prior disciplinary actions. The list will also include a rotation of inspectors from the committee. This will allow enforcement to maintain a contact list of professional inspectors available to provide expert opinions when necessary and engage committee members as resources as well. Enforcement attorneys will alternate among the inspectors on the list. The list inspectors will be updated, or the list will be updated as necessary, and the committee will also be used as a resource to recommend holders for the list. So we welcome your input on who should be on that list among yourselves and beyond.
If I can make another recommendation as far as the process is concerned, one of the issues that kind of came about when all this was kind of happening is whomever is on the committee, or whether it's just the chair and the vice chair or whatever the case may be, but when these actions, these disciplinary actions come out, TREC Advisor, or they just get published to where somebody is randomly once a week or so looking for disciplinary actions, which some people do. As soon as some of these come out, a lot of times the chair, or, and I know this vice chair or other members, get calls from shareholders asking about clarification on this and asking about these disciplinary actions, and from education providers going, oh my, do we have to completely change the rules now because this apparently changes what we're teaching, so on and so forth. So the concern that I have here is that those people call us, who we are supposed to know what's going on with everything that relates to the committee. We have no information on that because we haven't been given that information. So now it gives a bad appearance for the entity and the committee that it looks like we're not communicating. So even if those people, the chair and the vice chair or the committee members, aren't part of that particular rotation for that, for that disciplinary action, if there's a way we could make a process to where the committee is given the information, like Mr. Malloy gave us last week prior to this meeting, gave us the new ones, his report, so that we could actually look up that. So if we had questions today, we already had the information, we were able to click on it, and that's fantastic. But is it possible to create some part of the process? And I really don't want to micromanage it, but when before these enforcement processes go through, whether it be a day or 2 days before, that it go out to the committee so that we can at least look at them. So in case we get those calls, we have an answer for it instead of, I have no idea what you're talking about, which I think makes doesn't make us all look good.
Yes, for the most part. And I believe Mike can confirm that has already been implemented, at least in same time. So when those disciplinary actions, when an email goes out to commissioners, right, Mike?
Yes.
Then the committee will also be copied on that as a heads up of discipline that's final.
Yeah, if we could get a copy of that when, before that goes out, that'd be great. Like I said, if I had just a day or two to look those over, 90% of these that come through are not questionable. There's no questions. There's nothing. I mean, they're, unlicensed activity or something of that nature, and they're very clear cut. But occasionally we get a gray area disciplinary item that it'd be good to have that information so that we can actually speak intelligently to our shareholders that call us about it.
Hey, Mike, you guys informed the commission and therefore the committee prior to these going online, right? I mean, well,
it all happens simultaneously, because when orders come back from license holders and get signed, and then I forward them to Chelsea and she reviews them and signs them, when they come back to our legal assistance, it's all posted pretty much. That email goes out to the commission members, and we're going to start CCing the inspector committee. Not very long after that, it is all put on the website because we do a lot of orders, so we need closing cases, and that's just how the process works in general.
So you will get them, Lee.
Perspective, a day or two ahead can't happen.
Right.
In our current environment. And I don't think you really need that, but I think that you need the information quickly in the same time that our commissioners are getting them, and they're in the same boat. They're getting calls on disciplinary actions as well. So what we do for them, we will do for you, which is a real.
And occasionally field commissioners, like on occasion they'll email Chelsea or myself asking, questions about orders. And once you get them, if you have questions, you can send me an email asking. Absolutely.
No, I think I'm okay with that solution as long as we can get CC'd on that email that Mr. Malloy was talking about, and as long as that can start happening, I think that would be great. I'm perfectly fine. We just hadn't been being CC'd up to this point, so if we can get that, that'd be fantastic.
Yeah, the next order you get, you will be receiving it. So
yeah, I asked Mike a week or so ago, hey, has that been happening? And he said we haven't had an inspector. There hasn't been one to test our process, but I also want you to, I'm happy to provide that information, and I think it will serve y'all well. I also don't want you to feel like you need to know everything about every disciplinary action. Pass them to us. Just like Mike said, shoot Mike an email saying, I got this question, help me out. We do that regularly. So, other than regarding the expertise that we picked somebody's brain, the list that has not yet been created, this is a process that you're not involved in the front end. So I don't want you to feel like you need to take responsibility for these actions. That's what we as staff have to do. Right?
No, and I completely agree with that. Like I said, not trying to micromanage the process, but one, it's nice to have the information so that when we get those calls, we can speak intelligently on those matters. And two, in those gray area situations, as a committee member, it's a great, we're at the core of anything that needs to be changed. So we may find, and that's been the case just recently, where we saw something that was in the standards that, we really need to review. That it's clear, and that's, if we can hit that on the front side, it makes all of our shareholders' lives a little easier down the road. It makes it clearer for them and the education providers. So, all right, fair enough. I didn't want to beat that dead horse. I want to make sure we were all on the same page on that.
Before you move on, I would like to determine how best to how you'd like to weigh in on a potential list. Do you want to send any of you on this committee who want to be on that list, if you want to email Mike, or if you have other people you think should be included, I'd love to kind of move the ball on how best to establish that list.
I'd say any committee members that want to volunteer to be on it, and then you guys select whomever you deem appropriate, and maybe out in an email out to shareholders or to previous subject matter experts to say, hey, we've created a new process, and would you consider this process and whatnot?
That's great.
Yeah. If you can give me the names, at least on the committee, if you're interested, if you can email me, or I'll send out an email after this, so you have my email to respond to, and so we can get this ball rolling, like Chelsea said. I appreciate it. So.
Okay. Perfect. Thanks, you guys, for that. All right, item number 13, discussion regarding software being used by inspectors to complete truck inspection reports.
So this was added as on the request from the last committee meeting. I know there's been some issues in particular with software providers who put the required inspection report they don't have it primary. It's not the primary source. It's an attachment. And I'm happy to let Mike talk about what the process is when we're made aware of those, just so you know what we do. But there's also, anyway, I'll let Mike go ahead and go, and then we can talk about it more after that if you want to.
Well, we've never been we never reached out to any software company. Usually when they'll call us. A lot of times in the past, it's been, we're thinking about coming into your market. What's your rules? And we provide them the rules, and they may have some other questions they ask and stuff. But we've never actively gone out to talk to a company. I guess if it was a big issue, we could do that as a possible courtesy. The thing is, there's no real rule that says. I think the big issue, or things we've kind of provided advice for to these companies, is have that 7-5 up front, and then any kind of add-ons you want to do, supplements, bonus type of reports, so to speak, you have them after that. So at least the standardized report that the commission, the committee has approved, with the required standards of practice deficiencies and the stuff that needs to be put out, is there up front, especially with the preamble, and that's important language. There's no rule that says it has to be in front, but we say it's a good policy because that needs to be provided. And we hope if it's in front of everything else, then it minimally, hopefully, the client that'll be the first thing they view.
In order to change that, would that be a statutory deal? In order to
we'd have to change the rule. Yeah, if you want to say that the rule, the things needs to, we don't have jurisdiction over companies, obviously. So if you did make any kind of rule change, this would impact the actual inspectors. So if they didn't have much control over the software company, we would take that into consideration if someone filed a complaint of some kind, and we always do. But you'd have to, if you did propose some kind of rule, it would say, how we would decide on drafting it, saying that the 7-5 needs to be before any type of supplemental or, that type of stuff. I know there's a lot of opinion based upon the use of supplemental materials or summaries and stuff. So this rule would actually impact that as well, for people that do their own summaries.
Yeah, my concern is the consistency from the consumer and from agents and anybody who may be getting an inspection report. The beauty of the standard form is that it's the same format. They're in the same order. If you know that you only care about, you're looking for something in the plumbing section, you know exactly where to go and do it. If we start allowing, a multitude of different softwares to put all that stuff before that, and this is 80 pages down the road before you can actually get to this form, we're starting to lose that consistency, and I think we're kind of going down a slippery slope there.
Yeah, I mean, we always do an article too if you feel a rule isn't necessary. So.
Well, this was brought up to me by an inspector before the last meeting, who's considering using a software company that a lot of people have been switching to, and his concern before he made a large investment financially was being in compliance with TREC, and this software just delete, it emails out a summary basically, and you just click through different pictures you see with problems and stuff. Mike Morgan, I talked to him between the last meetings. He sent me an email because he's utilizing this software, and there is a way for the TREC inspection report to be delivered first. Mike sent me what he got the company to build for him. I don't think most people are using this, but apparently it does appear that you can force their hand to deliver the inspection report first before you get to the other things that they can. Because basically with their software, the TREC PDF is a secondary thought in their mind. They're building something else that everybody else interacts with before they get to the PDF. And I don't know if you want to chime in, Mike.
Yeah, this is Mike. I've only recently started using it in the last few months. And the inspector does have control over what report is delivered first. And actually, it's not what report is delivered first. Basically, you send an email with a link to both the PDF and then their web-based report. Yeah. And some inspectors, and just from what I've seen, it looks like all they do is send the link to the web-based report. But once you click on the web-based report, there is a button you can click to also look at the PDF. But yeah, the PDF definitely, for the most part, is a secondary report. Their web-based report with all the features, videos, and things is their big thing. But unless inspectors actually set it up to deliver the PDF together with the web-based, then the consumer may not even see the PDF.
So that speaks a bit to what Mike Malloy was saying about putting the impetus on the inspector. I mean, it sounds to me like this software allows the inspector to make a choice. They're providing this because I believe we're the only state that has a standard form. So they're, likely not developing something specifically for Texas, but they're given the ability for that person or that inspector to use it. Can you guys hear me? There seems to be a lot of background noise.
I can hear you.
Okay.
Yes.
So, do we do an article? Do you change the rules so then the inspector is required to, to make sure to specify the inspector is required to provide that form first? Because we don't have authority over the software providers to a certain extent, but we do over inspectors. And if inspectors are choosing not to use that form first, then,
Yeah, I think an article, because apparently the software, like Mike said, and what he sent me, you can set it up where it's in compliance. It's just, it's not really what the software has built themselves on, and all the features that most people buy into the software for are not what it does with the TREC form. It's what it does the other stuff. So I think if we put out an article clarifying, like, you need to deliver this, because you got to do a lot of hunting around to find the TREC report if you just get the web link only. So I think if we make clarification to the TREC inspectors what our expectations are with the software, then people will have some clarification. They can make their own business decision if they want to be in compliance or not.
I think an article would probably be good, but I would like to at least consider a possible rule change, because articles only, reach the people that actually take the minute to actually read them.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And if it sounds to me like there's already some inconsistency or some gray area as far as enforcement goes, as to whether, how to actually enforce this and whatnot. If we could clarify that language so it's easier for enforcement and makes it a little more black and white, it might be easier.
Essentially, 535-222 says that you're, as an inspector, required to provide a written report, and it gives you the time frame within 2 days of payment. 223, which is the rule I had put up, says the inspector is required to provide the 7-5. There's some gray area there because there's nothing that says that they've got to do that first. It says you got to do a written report, you have to do the 7-5, but and the implication is when you look at everything that it's supposed to be first, and that the other materials should be added as additional materials. But yeah, there's nothing clarifying that specifically in the rule.
Okay, I think Mr. Reinhardt had his hand up first.
I can make sure I'm muted. All right, so I've been kind of dealing with this for a couple of years in the sense that people have been sending me those reports, and I don't know, maybe just thinking out of the box for the next 5 years or 10 years or whatever, that report form was created back when we use these phones. I mean, it's old. technology has changed a lot. And maybe it's time to consider using something that is very user-friendly for our clients. Those new forms, they're kind of nice. I don't use them. I know they're available. The software I use does them for the other 49 states. But just an idea, I don't know what it takes, but we're still using a form that was created when we wrote them in wrote the reports in DOS. You know, so it may be something to think about coming into the, I mean, I can't imagine anybody still working on a DOS program computer, but that's where this form was created. Just an idea.
Okay. All right, Scott Regan.
Okay, after Sean brought that up, I actually did a little research and spoke to multiple inspectors that are using this form. And after I spoke with Sean again and he informed me that they can do this, went back to those other inspectors and sat and told them, you can change this form, and they still can't figure out how to do it correctly. And I'm not trying to be mean when I say this, but these are guys that have been using the same form program for 5+ years since it started. And just to go and click a button so that it changes the way it's sent, they're not understanding it. I believe what you're saying, Lee, that we need to change our rules, change education, and that Steve Reinhardt, they need to put that in the new form that's going out in the SOPs. That's all.
Okay. All right. Anybody else?
Sorry. Well, I just had a question for Steve. So, Steve, were you thinking along the lines of doing away with the Trek report, or just bring it up to speed?
I don't think I think there's a lot of good in the report in that it provides standardization.
Yeah.
But it is basically a DOS form that lacks the flexibility of technology, and some of those new forms, I mean, I look at the reports, and if I was a client and you put those two reports out in front of me, and even as an agent, I know which one I would probably want my client to be looking at, because it's easy to read, it's informative, it's everything else, or I've got this old DOS form that we're just making work. And it's like, maybe, I mean, I bet you that this new softwares can be, I don't know. I mean, I just threw it out there as, you know, we're still dragging along AM radio and crank window requirements in a new world. And it's like, maybe there's some things that need to be looked at. It's a long-term thing, but maybe an exploratory group to see what can be done in the report writing software, because it is for the client.
Well, some of the changes we're looking at the SOP committee require a change in that form. So this might be the opportunity to look at that before we implement a bunch of changes. All the software manufacturers update theirs, and then we come back and say, never mind, we don't think we want to use this form anymore at all.
No, and I don't think it would be even a code cycle. I mean, at least a way. This form took years. I mean, the first ones I started seeing were handwritten, then we made this report form to kind of standardize it. There's something to standardization, and even the ones that I see using this alternative program, they're kind of standard, they're just in a different sequence and order. I mean, they're you can put everything in there, so there's something to that. Anyway, it was just a thought that how long are we going to struggle trying to use the DOS technology form? Just an idea.
I think it's definitely worth the conversation. I mean, it brings up a valid point. It is an old form. I don't want to see us kind of get that involved in the current SOP review, though. I think because we are on a bit of a timeline on that SOP review, I'd just as soon see that go through, and then we look at that as a separate issue. But Tony, you had your hand up?
Yeah, I was, I'm sorry. I wanted to make sure that I don't know how to lower my hand. I just want to make sure. I have a question for people who do use this software. I guess Mike Morgan might be the best person to weigh in on it. I don't know if there's other inspectors on the call that use it, but does it while it doesn't follow the report form, whatever report they spit out, maybe Steve, you could speak to this too, does it hit all of the same requirements, just not in that order? In other words, if you were to put the report form up against what the software does it, or is there anything missing that's required in the 7-5 that's missing from whatever is produced from the software, or is it just the fact that it's in a different order and a different format that's the issue?
Well, okay, yeah. So actually, both reports, the PDF and the web-based report, are in the same sequence because you set up your own template when you start using the software, and your template starts with structural, foundation, grading, roof. You set the order, and as long as you've got your template set up correctly, it follows the TREC requirements. So the main difference is just the way it's displayed on the web-based report. You don't get the check boxes on the left, and you can embed videos, you can click on pictures and they enlarge. So there's a lot of very good features, but the report itself does follow the correct sequence. It covers every item that's required. Okay,
thank you, Mike. I just thought it's an important part of that conversation about when we do end up opening that up, you know, there are ways to make sure that that whatever you guys decide on is similar enough to what we're doing now, if you were to go that route, without having a specific this set in stone type of thing. Anyway, just my 2 cents.
Randall Needham, you had your hand up?
Yes, thank you for recognizing me. You know, right now it allows the delivery to be in the 7-5 or the web-based. From my perspective, I've looked at these reports and it's a lot easier to read than the 7-5. As long as everything's getting reported and they have access to the 7-5, what difference does it make whether it's delivered first or whether they can click on it and read the dry report of the 7-5? Just my opinion.
Yeah, the preamble is important. I agree with that. I also think that there may be things in that other interface and that other report format that isn't necessarily, you know, the different format doesn't necessarily have to follow the standards, so they don't have to put all the information in there, as opposed to the 7.5 form has to have all the information that is required based on the SOPs. I think the format that's there, because I've seen those reports too, and if you take their report versus the 7.5 and look at those side by side, there's information that's in the 7.5 that is not in their report. And that information in the 7.5 is standards based, that has to be reported by standards, but isn't in that other interface. So the 7.5 current, you know, provides all the information as it relates to the standards, although the information that is required may not have made this report, and whether you think this information is actually important or not or should be in that report is certainly another conversation. But with the 7.5, you know that you're getting the information that is required by the SOPs as opposed to the other one. Currently, it is not one for one as far as information goes. That's what I noticed. So, anybody else have any? Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, and I have no doubts that software providers could tweak those things that were missing if that was an opportunity, because there are, you know, this software is used in, it's available in all states. And although not many of the states have a standard report form, many states have standards of practice that software has tweaked itself to meet. So it could be, I mean, there's no reason it couldn't be tweaked to meet those things, to provide some of those things that are not provided that you identified there. I mean, it's just, there are very few limits in that software, and they're not there. That's not the only one. I mean, the software I use has Texas and it has the rest of the world, and it's very possible to join the rest of the world. We did that with
like I said, I think it's definitely worth the conversation. I also don't want to see us try to cater to one particular type of software. I don't think that's the right path to go down either. So It's certainly worth conversation. We can keep going with that. Scott Regan.
Okay, I've listened to everything. So here's what we do. We use a program that we actually do the Texas report plus a web-based report and additional reports. But in the email that gets sent out to the clients, it states that this is where your Texas report is. This is your additional report. I think that basically as long as an inspector is giving the information how to get to the report, is that suffice enough and everything's what we're all talking about? Because if there's a it's informing the client that how to get to the TREC report that's required to be sent, and then it states in the document any additional information after that can be provided. So I'm getting at, it's the responsibility of the inspector to inform the person where they're putting stuff. That's how we've been doing it for 15 years.
Okay. Randall?
Thanks for recognizing me again. Part of this, and when I go through my report with my clients and I get to the preamble, I tell them, this is legalese. You can read it if you want, but how many are truly going to read the legalese? And that's what I tell my clients. It's legalese, it's state mandated information, and 99% of our clients, probably 99.9% of clients move right past it and don't even look at it. So getting back to what are we going to provide the client? Are we looking to provide them the legalese? Are we looking to provide them a report that they can look at and read and decipher easily? And to me, that's where we should be going, is as long as we're providing the state required. Don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to avoid state requirements. As long as they're getting that 7-5, if the other report that they're getting is what they prefer to look at, and they have access to the 7-5, they've got access to both at that point.
Okay. Tony?
Yeah, well, a couple of things. One is I think that, we could talk about this till the cows come home, but I do think it's an important issue that maybe should be moved to a more focused meeting where we can actually maybe take some action on it if you want to. But I think just to put in perspective a couple of things, one thing that Scott said and a thing that Randall just said is there's got to be meaning behind a requirement. So if the requirement is just to comply with the fact that there's a form, but there's no meaning behind it, in other words, it's just a box checks, oh, I provided the form, that's kind of regulation for regulation's sake. If the desire is for consistency and to provide information in a certain way, I think that needs to be part of that discussion. And I think that just from a consumer perspective, that makes sense to have some consistency. Does that mean consistency in what you report rather than how you report it? I don't know, but I just think that having it be a checkbox and just say, well, it doesn't, as long as they're providing the report, it doesn't matter if they read it or what, that seems to me the wrong kind of rationale for having a consistent report to be out there, just weighing in on that. So I think that, again, we could sit here for another hour and discuss this because this is a big issue. And I know inspectors came up to me when I first came on the commission in 2012 and complained about the fact that we're the only state with a report form. So it's a big issue and it's meaningful to a lot of people. But I would recommend that we table this and maybe have a focused meeting once the SOPs are adopted, to figure out what's the best way to provide or present that information. And actually, maybe you come down on the fact that the form is the right way to do it. How can you make sure that the inspectors are doing it? Or maybe it's not the right way to do it. How can you make sure that they're reporting what they need to report?
Okay. Well, I think that'll kind of lead us right into our next item, which is request for future meeting agenda items. I think that would certainly qualify. Does anybody else have any future agenda items that they would like to see put on?
Well, Lee, do you think that and Tony, I guess too, do you feel like that we should continue to meet about this in the full committee, or should we address it in a smaller level and come back with a recommendation? Because we've talked about it in the last couple of meetings. I'm not sure we will resolve it in a full committee meeting. I'm
thinking that might be one of those things that we may want to do maybe a task force or something more informally before we actually bring it back to the full committee, because I think Tony's right. If we keep trying to do this in the full committee, it's just going to go, it can go 20 different directions. But maybe if we have like a subcommittee or an informal meetings just to bring forth ideas, maybe 2 or 3 different options, directions that we might want to go to, where we can get the full committee's opinion on what direction we might want to go. We may not get the specific rule or results, but at least the where we think this might be a good way to go.
Yeah. We've done that in the past, where we have a kind of a working group, and we invite stakeholders, other license holders as well, to come in and kind of have a larger conversation, have a seat around the table to provide input, and then we bring that forth to the full committee to determine that. We could go that route.
Yeah. I think if we just keep doing it here, we're all going to keep bouncing all over the place. But if we at least have a general direction on where a lot of people have already decided this is probably the best route to go, then we can kind of fine tune it from there in the full committee.
Okay, perfect.
All right. Any other future meeting agenda items? No?
I don't know if you want to set a certain special line item for the SOP presentation and review of everything we've gone through.
Yeah, that'll be up in the January meeting, because we have to get those proposed to the commissioners. So yes, absolutely.
You also have elections at the January meeting.
Yes. Yep. And then somebody else started to talk when you did, Sean. Who was that?
I this from the education committee. I guess what's a possibility? What you think, Jennifer, about having something that we have go to the education subcommittee and then have for the full committee for January?
Yeah, I think that works, Stephen. I think you and I had discussed getting an education subcommittee meeting on the books so that we could present them with the ideas from the writing group. So I think that's appropriate.
Okay.
I think Steve's using that flip phone for his internet service because his voice keeps breaking up.
He said, I keep trying to use this little guy.
All right, so item 15, discussion of future meeting dates. We had a suggested date of Monday, January 11th.
Yeah, sorry, Lee. We had a little bit of a scheduling issue with the 11th. So the 11th does not work. But those alternate dates work, as does January 4th. Or if that's too close to holidays, we could do Friday the 15th. So you have the 4th available to you, you have the 12th, the 14th, or the 15th. I want to make sure we have the right staff coverage because all these groups have got elections and things like that coming up.
Okay. I can't do the 12th. I can do any of those other dates, but I can't do that. The second Tuesday is always a busy meeting day for me.
I can't do the 14th, but I can do the 4th.
What about the 15th, Sean?
Does the 15th work for the staff?
It does.
Well, yeah, that's what she said. 4th, 12th, 14th, or 15th. So,
yeah.
Okay. Anybody else have any specific day conflicts where these dates may not work?
Friday's always better than Monday.
Okay, so it sounds like you'd like to see the 15th?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I'm okay with the 15th. Anybody else have any concerns or conflicts with the 15th?
With me.
I couldn't tell if that was an objection or what.
No, I said that's good with me.
Okay. All right, so I think we're good with the 15th, if that works for you, Miss Amber.
It's good.
All right, you're locked in. We got you. No one can take it.
All right, so I'll put that in. All right, without anything else, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I second, Scott.
Make that motion.
Oh. Motion made and seconded. We will adjourn the meeting at 11:26 a.m. Thank you, everybody, for your participation. Have a wonderful day.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Stay safe.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
everyone.
We're good.